Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to GuildCast episode 27 for June 12th. June 12th, 2012. You're watching Gamebreaker. I'm Gary Gannon today. Massive show for you guys on the heels of the beta weekend. We're going to talk about all of our experiences and typing. Of course, we're going to talk about typing and the Reddit Q&A. Looking at you. I'll play the video again.
What's up?
Plus leveling via crafting and the die system, all that and more. But first, of course, Gamebreaker Editor-in-Chief, Mr. Scott Hawks. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I've been waiting to see Elizabeth's face turn red like that for about 4 or 5 hours now.
What was that noise?
She has left the building. Look, she's gone. Oh, Elizabeth from Massively.com. Oh, wait, she's not here? Wait, yes, she's here. And it's Elizabeth from Massively. Stop that. Hi.
Oh, it's gonna be a long show.
Oh, it's gonna be such a long show. I got that queued up and ready to go. My fingertips.
Oh, Lord.
From Massively.com, it's Richie Procopio. How are you, sir?
I'm doing amazing.
I don't have a dubstep remix of you, so...
No, this is the non-dubstep me.
Yes, the non-dubstep you. And joining us again, it's been a while, it's Mr. Ed Park, Togram.com. How are you,
What's
sir?
up, Gary?
We needed a little PvP perspective up in this piece. People been asking for you. You're there, you're here. All right. Let's talk about it. Beta weekend is over. Everybody getting back to real life. The long wait starts again. We get to sit around and wait for emails or tweets or something to play again. But we're here to help you through it, week in and week out. Tell your friends if they're going through withdrawals. You know, you don't need to see a doctor. You just need to see GuildCast. We're here for you. I'll leave Richie out of this because he was off on some excursion with the kids. The wife.
I got to play a little bit.
Okay.
Couple hours.
You got a few hours in? All right, what did you...
I got a few hours.
All right, let's start with you. What did you focus on? Did you play the same tune, different tune? What did you do?
I rolled a warrior. Wanted to try out a warrior for the first time. Got him to level 10, and I actually tried Mr. Ed Park's rifle warrior spec in a PvP match, and did very well. Only died once and won the match. It's pretty cool.
Ed, you're already building out specs?
Working on it, man. The trait tiering screwed things up for me a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
They changed it up.
Scott Hawks, did you break your addiction? Oh my God, are you kidding me? Really?
I played.
You played your guardian again?
I played a thief. Up till level 8 and a ranger up till level 10, and then a guardian.
Elizabeth, how about you? What did you do this time?
I focused on my Mesmer and my Necromancer, and I did mostly upper level PvP with a couple buddies. Or, I'm sorry, not PvP, PvE with a couple buddies. I stepped briefly into both World versus World and Structured, but spent most of my time in PvE.
Did somebody say stepped? Dub? Stepped?
He walked right into that.
I can't talk about World versus World because he's always going to be like, did someone say dub v dub? And it'll be off. My lord.
Sorry, I didn't make it. One of our fans made that amazing video. They did a really good job on that, though, didn't they?
Yeah, seriously. Someone sent it to me a couple hours ago, and I loved it. I thought it was the greatest thing
I was
ever.
actually so bummed that you saw it because we've had it for like so long and we were waiting to show it and it's been in the notes and it's like, don't show Elizabeth this video.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
It's okay. And then I saw somebody tweeted it at you and you were like, oh my God, oh Lord, I think was your response.
I was certain it would be used for nefarious reasons.
I rolled a thief this time. Played to about level 12, and I did mostly dub v dub. I guess I said dub. Can't go there. It's too soon. Ed, look at you. We're like what's that show?
Brady Bunch?
Yes.
Brady Bunch.
We're kind of like the Brady Bunch at this point. We got like, yeah, this is great. This is like
But
mine.
I'm feeling you. Richie gets me. Kind of that old school.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just trying to put this to work.
I got
Minds are blown with the 5th box.
Yes.
It's true.
First up, let's talk about. All right, so everybody knows what we played, what we focused on. Like I said, I did mostly WW. First up, let's talk a little bit about just performance wise. Do you guys? We kind of bring this up every beta weekend, 2 times, I guess now, every 2.
Yeah.
I saw another major increase though. I feel like in WW. I was running super high specs, massive amounts of people on screen, and really like little to no run down at all. How are you guys faring?
It was super smooth on my end. I had another nearly flawless weekend. I know that before the first, I think, build was released during the middle of Friday, a lot of people were having like 7-second lag spikes before a skill would trigger, but none of that touched me at all. I had a really smooth performance.
Anyone else have any issues? Any spikes, lag, anything like that?
No, I had
very good.
I had things on max settings, and I was frapsing at full resolution, and it didn't touch it. It was awesome. It was really smooth this time.
Let me start with Ed. Ed, what's your take on WW? Did you do mostly structured or world versus world stuff?
No, I covered the rainbow this weekend. I did some WW. It's a lot of fun. I mean, I love that there's so many objective points that you can fight over. I would say the game performance in Game Client was noticeably more stable and smoother. There were times when the PvP game servers and tournaments were down. But aside from that, the WW was pretty good. I did get lag when there were like greater than 40 or 50 combatants in the area. But overall the performance has been pretty good. I mean, there hasn't been a game that's licked that problem. If there's north of 50 players in the area, of not having the game start to degrade in terms of performance, unless you're on a really high-end computer, which I know some of our other fellow co-hosts here are on really high-end gaming rigs.
What do you guys think overall? I mean, this is the first I spent a lot of time in World versus World. I only dipped my toe in it in the past weekend, but this time I really spent hours and hours in there. And the combat is super fun. I mean, I think they really got it right. The keeps, the castles, just even. What do you guys think overall of just how it's sort of set up and structured? One thing I did miss, I hope somebody can tell us about it. I was pretty sure, Scott, you got to see it, was I did not get to see the World versus World dungeons, which I am bummed about.
Oh, yes.
But let's talk first about just the overall World versus World stuff, because I think there's a lot of really good qualities about it. There's something about the combat that is super fun. The large zergs are really intense and a really good time. I want to get everybody's perspective first, because I think there's something missing, is where I'm going with this. I feel like there is something missing to World versus World, and there's can't quite completely put my finger on it yet, but I feel like there's an opportunity being missed here, and who knows if they're going to add it. They just keep adding stuff like dungeons weren't in the last one, so who knows? What do you guys feel overall, though? Do you think it's good as is, Richie?
I mean, it's definitely. I kind of know what you're saying a little bit, though it's hard to kind of put your finger on it. It's definitely great when you fall in with it, like an organized group, and you're going and you're actually taking things out. But it kind of feels like you're romping one thing after another, and it can become repetitive over time. I feel like once the game launches and we see some people really start strategizing and people actually holding certain keeps and actually, massive teams getting together and actually coordinating with different guilds holding different areas, and we might see a different beast than what we're experiencing in these beta weekends. I think it's fun in a big group of people, not so much in a smaller group, at least from what I found. If you're just by yourself or with just 1 or 2 other people, it's really better to just go do PvE, from my opinion.
And I think you touched on the exact point that I want to make is, does anybody else feel that there's no reason to hold them? Like, it's basically a capture and defend map, just really big, and you just take over, keep, zerg it, move on, run. Like, you're off. You finish it, you kill the lord. What is it? What's the leader or the overlord? I can't remember, the main boss guy in there, the heart. You kill him, and then everybody just jumps over the wall and moves on to the next one. That's actually my problem with it, is that I think I'd like to see something a little bit more persistent, and maybe a reason for guilds to, hate to say it, but I almost want World versus World to be like my player cities, like a reason to almost live in World versus World, if you know what I'm saying. Like, give me some NPCs, give me resources, like some reason to go there, take over something, and actually hold it and stay there and not just move on from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys think there's a missed opportunity there that they could possibly implement something that would make it feel like that? Because I know they've said they just want it to be fun and just move on and not really something very serious, but I feel like it's almost like I'm going to keep on. There's a couple different types of players, right? You've got like the structured PvP guys who really want to show off their skills. Like Ed, I'm sure you're really into probably the structured, I'm going to guess. You want leaderboards, you want stats, you want to really show off. Then there's guys like me who want to be sort of a part of a bigger picture, and I want to play with like our 300-400 person guild at this point because we have like 4 guilds. And I want to be questing or something and get the guild message from Scott that says, everybody, anywhere, you have to stop what you're doing and get to our castle right now in World versus World. It's being overrun. And like these mass, messages of people just moving in. I just think there's a missed opportunity because I think I'm a different type of PvPer than Ed. And I don't feel like I'm totally getting what I want.
No, I definitely love the world versus world. I think, like as you said, there's something that maybe they're missing, which is after you kill a boss, instead of having the friendly boss respawn pretty quickly and for the keep to be in tip-top shape, maybe you should have to stick around and decide how many people should stay in a keep and defend it until it's kind of rebuilt or recovered, as opposed to just, like you said, have everyone just flip a keep, and then just goes or the next thing on the map, which is the other color. So, I think it might be a little bit more interesting if you had to strategically think about, how do we split our forces? How do we allocate and coordinate with other guilds? Like, who's going to stay in cover, make sure this node is solid before we move on and try to push to other points?
Almost like Conquest. Go ahead, Scott.
I think making each time you take a keep have slightly more permanence would help. But also, I think at the moment we're looking at this from weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? We're doing this with facing other servers, and we're doing it over, well, not even a weekend because they're switching them around, and balanced it really well, actually, very quickly between the servers over the weekend. So it's difficult to really feel the benefits of what having the bonuses from WVW really means to you, because it's only going to be for a couple of days. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, did anybody really care what bonuses we were getting from WVW?
Not really.
Nobody did. Because of that period of time, it's going to make no difference whatsoever.
Well, now
if it does make a difference over the more 2-week periods, and you start getting those server rivalries, then I think perhaps it will have more effect. People will be more interested in being organised, and the fact that those keeps will matter more. I think at the moment we're just running around and going crazy. So that's going to be the way it feels. It's whether that is those points, those buffs, those matchups are going to matter over those 2-week periods. I think I just don't know if it's going to balance itself out. That's the big question. Like, is it going to balance itself out? I'm not sure it's going to, because there's not a real personal connection to these structures, right? And I feel like until you give the players some sort of real investment of a larger picture into really what's happening, it's going to be really hard to kind of feel that attachment. I don't know. Elizabeth, what did you think?
Well, the couple times that we have seen people like really caring to defend it gets it to be a much more interesting thing. Like in the previous beta weekend, when there was that one hold that was so well defended because it was their last bastion within the map that we were playing in, the other team just did this fantastic job, using the upgrades and such stuff available to put on arrow carts and defend this and strengthen that. And it was nigh unto impregnable. Like, it was a very difficult fight and a very interesting one. And that's something that I've seen a couple people talking about happening again this time around, where people stayed with the keep and defended it. So if there's a reason to do that, and if players feel incentive to do that, which they might on their own over a longer period of time anyway, I think it'll be a very much more the sort of thing that you're looking for.
So I mean, I had some of those moments. I had a couple fights that literally lasted for like over an hour, where there was this great choke point, like with an archway, and they've made the map superbly, like the choke points and how far some of the siege weaponry can reach. It's like just far enough, this, that, and it gets these like really packed in areas of people fighting. Like I said, I think it's going to have the opposite effect, though. I think the more we play it, the more repetitive that stuff is going to feel. Even though that fight was super fun, I think the longer we do it, I think the more I'm actually going to get. I'm going to feel less inclined to actually want to hold these keeps and stay with them.
Well, one of the things that's going to help once the game is out there and launches is the ability for guilds to actually sponsor a keep or a tower that they take over. So your server will have all of its top guilds that are wanting to do War versus World. They're actually going to have guilds representing each keep. So there's going to be an investment there. You don't want your keep to be the one that's taken over. You don't want your guild to be the one that gets face rolled. So having that kind of association, I think, is going to help that sense of.
Do we know anything more about that association, like how it's actually going to work?
I don't know tons about it. I know that you can each guild can sponsor like one captured area, either a keep or a tower of some sort, and they can assign a different buff that they give to allies on the server that are around the general area of that keep. Other than that,
so that's a big step in the right direction of what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Then there's something like that, like not just like a guild banner, but there needs to be some sort of real. And I am, dare I say, people are already getting mad at this. I almost feel like they should make like sort of like a money sink. Like we have, like, to fix up the walls and kind of do reinforcements. I think as a guild, and only the guild could possibly add to that, not outsiders. So you as a guild would have to actually, like, maybe collect mats and have like master craftsmen build the walls and reinforcements and spend money. Because I feel like if you do stuff like that as a group together, the payoff is so much greater towards.
Well, it kind of is at this moment. Upgrades do cost actual gold as well as occasionally supply. So as people begin to do that sort of thing where they put gold into defending it, they will then have more of a vested stake in it. So that's already kind of in place. People just need to have enough time to take advantage of it, because over a 24-hour period of time, it's almost not really worth it. Because, I mean, why would you defend something that you know you're going to lose in 15 hours or whatever?
Yeah, and I think Elizabeth is hitting on a really important point. I actually saw in the first beta weekend event, there was a lot more server pride and competitiveness, whereas in this past weekend, people didn't seem to care so much. And there was also speculation that the WW ranking system wasn't working, because in the last two pairings that we have, our server was face rolling the other two, like literally like pushing them, through all the way back to their home map. So, and I also think there'll be a distinction too once the game goes live and people have server pride, and like Richie was saying, people can claim keeps for their guild. I think the level of competitiveness is going to ratchet up a lot. Like, it's a difference between playing a game in preseason. It's preseason football. Nobody really cares if you win or lose. Versus this is the regular season. This is our chance to advance. I think server pride is going to really kick in at that point.
All right, so let's talk a little.
Go ahead. If you can fly your colours over a keep, that's the end of it. People will want that, and they'll say, right, that's ours, and we're going to show it. And we're going to show everybody else we win.
Was that already in game? Because I feel like I saw different banners inside of areas. Was that no? Because I did see banners, and I wasn't really sure if they were some sort of guild banners or not. But I did see some things like changing or something.
I did see it. It might just be that we didn't get the opportunity to see it on our server. But
yeah, I mean, like I said, maybe some of these things are in the works. I just feel like I hope that there's, like, over time we see more of an investment put on World versus World, just because it's definitely. I hope it just doesn't become Zergfest after Zergfest after Zergfest. But the combat is fantastic. Like, I'm actually really surprised. I can't believe how many people are on my screen at once. With the amount of particle effects were going off was insanity, and it was actually still working. Like, the game didn't break down. Most MMOs at that point completely just, like, break down. Scott, all right, I'm going to ask you. Tell me about my biggest failure over the weekend of not seeing the World versus World dungeons. Tell me about it. I hear it's like a giant puzzle.
Oh, my God. It's huge. And, yeah, it's basically a massive jumping puzzle. And... Yoshi, Leon, and Air Stogolkin, who helped a lot getting through that. Thank you. Because by 3 a.m. my time, I was basically a gibbering wreck. Just before, it was mental. It was crazy. Like, it's some of it's really quite. A bit, yeah. You go in and Thanks, guys. I'm getting trolled in chat there. Yeah, you go in, and basically by that time, as I was like vibrating, I was so tired, and I was walking off the end of stuff. Never mind missing jumps, and it gets so frustrating. But it's also so incredibly absorbing. Like Sweater's got kind of the holocron things where you have to find them, and there's some little jumps and things like that. This just it's like that magnified by a million.
Where's the entrance to this? I completely.
It's at the keeps. Like the one keep that it was round the side of the keep. Once you go inside, it was just around the side of the wall, and there's a mystic portal you go into. And then you get inside, and there's all these. It's this massive cavern, and as you're going along, there can be other people doing lovely things, like as you're standing there, spears fly out the floor and damage you. Because there are control terminals at certain key points throughout this dungeon, and you can view from that vantage point where people are coming and then set these traps off. So at one point I got stabbed by spears. At another, this includes spears that come out the ground when you're jumping onto a column that's 60 feet off the ground. So you jump on the column, and then spears shoot out of it. And so then you can't jump because you're hurt, because you'll miss the next one, and it's a pain. Then Indiana Jones style, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, I walked down a hallway, and a giant boulder rolled over my head, which was fun. And then 20 more followed it. And that was somebody in my own guild just trolling me, which...
So is most of the entire dungeon set up like that, of just trap after obstacle after...
The entire thing's an obstacle course, and then at key points there are traps that you can use to set up. And we actually got into some PvP with the opposing side while we were in there. They started coming in while we were doing the traps. So being at those key points and holding them is so important. Like we held the one point where there's a bridge going across, and these guys started walking across, and we pulled the lever, and a giant log swings down and knocks them off the bridge, which was like hilarious.
Oh my God.
So they're standing there like trying to time the run, and as they are, we start like firing arrows and spells at them, trying to hit them as they're stuck behind a corner, not knowing what to do. It was a blast. It was just had a great night. I mean, it drove me crazy, and I literally wanted to pull my hair out at key points, but it was still just absolutely absorbing. And at the end, you finally get all the way to the end. My favourite room, sorry, I'm just going crazy on this. My favourite room, you go in, and it's pitch black. You cannot see a thing.
Come on,
Before
they
the
went
room,
pitch black.
You can't see anything.
The dark room.
Yeah,
An
the
utterly
dark
dark room.
Before it, there's a bonfire, and if you go and click on the bonfire, you can get 2 torches. And they have 3 abilities. 1, you can just set fire to the ground around you. 2, you can throw the torch into the distance. And 3 is you just jab it forward. And what you had to do in the dark room was basically throw the torch and see, and it'll give you a glimpse of all the different places to jump, or where the gaps are. And so a lot of the time you're jumping into darkness onto a 50-foot high ledge that's like 4 foot wide or less, and then you get across to that, and then there's a series of dragon statues, and as you go near them, they breathe fire that knocks you off.
This sounds as terrifying as DayZ. This is like death. Like, are there zombies in there too? And is there permadeath in this dungeon?
After you spent an hour getting a few of the jumps and learning them right, and then you go into there and you jump, you go, yeah, I made it, and then this statue breathes fire and knocks you off the edge. You're squealing, like just so. No!
And where do you start back at the beginning of the dungeon? Where do you?
No, it's in sections. Basically, if you're in the dark room, you're going to land at the bottom of the dark room and have to start all the way out of that room again. There are sections where there's quite a lengthy phase where if you drop, you go down and run back up the steps and start over and risk getting hit by rolling in Raiders of the Lost Ark boulders. But no, it's broken up into sections, so if you get past the one section, it's almost like a save point. But doing it on your own, don't. Because seriously, some of them you drop, and if you drop and you die, there's not a waypoint inside. So you will have to go outside then and start all over again. So you need people around to help you get back up, which a lot of the 4 guilds that we had by the end of the weekend, people were coming in and rezzing me quite regular. And it really, teamwork really helped, like giving each other buffs, speed buffs and stuff, helping each other get across. It was really cool. It had a great night. I wanted to cry at 3 or 4 different stages, but it was great by the end.
Is it just me, or does anybody else picture Gary 6 months after leave still on a level 5 character sitting in front of the control panel waiting for someone to come so he can set traps on them?
That's my alt, sir. That is my alt.
It's going to stand there the whole time.
Ed knows. He came up with my nickname. What's
Triple G, baby.
Yeah. This sounds fantastic. I mean, you know what it sounds like? It sounds almost like content that's kind of geared towards a specific type of player, right? Because I can see a lot of people completely ignoring this and be like, you know, that sounds like a nightmare. Like, that sounds way too much and too intense for me. But it's great that it's going to have content like that for players who want that, because it sounds like it's going to have like a lot of those white knuckle sort of moments of, like I said, it's almost, you're making it almost sound like it's like DayZ or something. What's actually the point of all of it, though? Like, what's the key?
At the end, when you get to the very, very, very end of it, there's a giant chest, and there's random items, I believe, including blueprints that you can use for, like, you know, trebuchets and all the rest of it. So if you keep control of that against the opposition, perhaps that might give you a bit of an edge. I would think in BWE2. If you keep control of that area, then you're stopping like generation of these blueprints and so on, and so you force them to go elsewhere. I guess that could be way. But basically, the point is to drive yourself insane and have a big lot of laughs while dropping boulders onto people's heads and knocking them off bridges with large logs.
Any of the other guys get to experience this? Anyone else get to try it? Elizabeth, did you try this?
I did not. I was sad to miss out on it, but I was busy doing actually a dungeon run at the time.
At what point, Scott, does the other opposing servers or whatever, where do they kind of converge and meet? How does that work?
Pretty much within 50 yards of getting inside.
Oh, really?
They can come at you like you get inside and there's a bunch of ledges and stairs going down into a deeper part, but you run along a tight, narrow concrete ledge. And then you're into a smaller section, and that section has got, you know, it's like a corridor, but that corridor has actually got spears that come out the ground and the walls at you if somebody's setting them off. And then we were in there, and as we were like, oh, this looks a bit dodgy, trying to get this first jump correct, someone came up and shot us in the back, and we turned around and there's 4 or 5 of the enemy there at you. So they can get to you pretty close into where you first get in there. So there's no sort of like, you can't, it's not like you can get halfway through, you have to get halfway through the dungeon before you can start having some PvP. It really is pretty soon in. I mean, they have to come at you, I imagine, across a little bit of a distance, but they can get to you at the start. Right. So yeah, it was.
Now, all right, we gotta stop talking. We gotta stop talking about this, because now I just can't wait for Beta Weekend 3, because this is like probably all I'm gonna do.
Seriously, it will. It'll absorb you. I mean, that's just the one. I mean, there's one in the Borderlands as well I didn't even see. But I'd like to thank Mike B for his moral support, standing at the end going, I did it before you.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about some PvP. This show is going to be like 9 hours long at this point.
Yeah.
We're like not even started. Ed, we brought you on the show to talk some PvP. So you played World versus World and some structured stuff. Let's talk about, I mean, just in general, maybe some structured stuff first of all. I mean, what do you think of the maps?
I like the maps. They're very dynamic. There's a ton of line of sight opportunities, and you know, so you can use area of denial tactics on doorways. You know, knocking people off. There, you know, catwalks. You can hide behind things if you're getting sniped at. I like it a lot. What I found really interesting was the way that people play the structured PvP. Obviously, because it's generally more of a pug, or it's, you know, like a 8 versus 8 situation, was very different than how the organized 5v5s ran for the pickup tournaments. Because we did some of both over the weekend, and, you know, it was, like I said, it was interesting to see the different types of specs that people would run. But, you know, the pre-made action was very, very different from the, you know, 8v8 stuff.
What were you actually running? What class and spec?
I played Warrior, so I had a couple like specs that I theory crafted for the weekend. My 2 Elementalist specs kind of got wrecked by the trait tiering, so they didn't work. But I played Rifle, Spec Warrior, and I played quite a bit of Guardian, which, in my opinion, got some significant offensive buffs or alternatively, because of the larger health pools or something, the other classes got a little bit weaker. Yeah, I mean, Guardian is fantastic. I mean, you notice, like, if you play structured PvP, a lot of the game is about having group swiftness buffs to cover ground. You know, it was just on the forest of Nifafel, whatever it's called, the forest. Yeah, exactly. But the 5v5s was a lot about having swiftness buffs to cover ground, try to kill your boss or ninja the other people's boss, and then it was a lot about heavy focus fire because they implemented that mark a target and then switch to target, kind of that focus fire functionality. So there were a lot of direct damage builds in the structured 5v5s versus for the pickup 8v8s. There were a lot more of condition builds, and there was less focus on area of denial in general.
How was balance feeling overall for only the second beta weekend?
I mean, I think it's pretty good. I mean, there's some problematic mechanics that people talk a lot about. The one that comes up the most frequently is the sigil. I can't remember, Sigil of Doom. I think it's the one on the weapon swap. It's a 30% increase to your next attack, and when you couple that with certain other heavy bursting type of abilities, you can really wreck people for crits over 10k, which is getting close to half-shotting or one-shotting people depending how big their health pool is. So overall, I mean, I think I saw players of every class excel in PvP, so that's a good sign. There isn't anything from my perspective when I look at the class now. Before this weekend, I would have said, in my opinion, Guardian was significantly weaker than any other class that I tried or fought against. But after this weekend, I think I've seen all classes be very effective. It's a lot about the player behind the keyboard and whether they found a good spec that has good mechanics. So they've statted correctly, they've picked good traits that work together well. Especially the utility skills. Actually, that's something where a lot of people are, sometimes not making such good decisions based on, where they put their trait points. But the balance is fairly good right now.
Liz,
for being in beta.
Liz, you played a bunch. You said you played a bunch of structured, right?
I played a little bit of structured, not a lot, no.
What were you thinking of it? How far? I was hearing some. I didn't play a Necro, but I was hearing some grumblings of everybody were saying the Necro is way overpowered.
I found that a lot of people would run away from a Necromancer if you have a lot of minions with you, because minions are a little bit scary. But I didn't ever feel, I at least certainly never felt overpowered. But then again, I really wasn't in there for very long, and so yeah.
What about anybody get to check out what's the new area? Gendaran Fields?
Gendaran Fields is where I actually spent most of my time. So when I wasn't being productive, I was in there trying for completion. I liked it a lot. It was really fun to see a higher level area that had kind of increased stakes, and it was nice to see a place that had a lot of outposts. Like in Keswick Hills, you've got like one or two places that are kind of safe zones where trade's going on, but there were a lot of different places where interesting things could kind of coalesce around, which was nice.
What kind of stuff is there? Like, what's sort of the area all about?
So, in the bottom of Keswick Hills, and especially in this map, you start to get introduced to the Orien Undead and the Risen, who are kind of the precursors of the big baddie of the game. So these are all the Risen zombie types that are coming after you and kind of encroaching on the land and making everything really, really nasty.
It is DayZ. I knew it. See?
There you go, yeah. So that's going on in part of the map. In part of the map, you have pirates. Not a lot of centaurs, although there is one area. And you also have some interaction with the dredge, which people playing the Norn should be familiar with. So it's where you really start to see the maps sort of coming together. So you see a little bit of the dredge from the Norn side and a little bit of the Orien that everybody else is dealing with. So it's kind of a blending zone.
What was the level of this zone?
25 to 35, I believe.
Okay. Anybody else get to check it out? Anyone else? I was just PvPing my face off pretty much most of the time, so I didn't see any of that stuff. How about the Mystic Forge? Did anybody check this out at all? Anybody throw some swords in there and see what comes out?
A little bit.
I did like 3 turns through it. I don't know if anyone else did more.
Actually, explain to everybody what the Mystic Forge is, those who may not know what it is, because that was just put into this beta, right?
Yes, so in kind of the center area of Lion's Arch, you have this forge. It's this big glowing thing, and you go up and talk to it, and it looks a lot like a crafting window. When you first go up to it, it says, place in 4 things for the Mystic Forge, and you drag over a random thing from your inventory, and depending on what you drag in, other things will either be grayed out or they'll remain visible, so you know that those are viable options. So basically, you drag in 4 of whatever junk armor and weapons you have. I think I only ever saw myself being able to put in weapons and armor, but that might have been because of what I had in my inventory. So you put in 4, you hit, it tells you that, whatever you have is an acceptable combination. And then Zamoros, who is the djinn that is controlling this thing somehow, spits a weapon back at you or an item of some sort. And I found that it's generally always better than whatever you put in. Like, I put in a level 12 blue item and a couple whites that were lower level than that, and I got a level 19 green back. So it wasn't actually something I could use. It was cloth, and I was on a warrior, but it was still a substantially better item. And then, I put in 2 axes and 2 swords, all of them white, none of them very high level, and I got back a bow that was actually better than what I had equipped at the moment. So none of that was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, but it was really cool, and it's something that I really want to play around with more in the future when I have higher level weapons and more of something to experiment with.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be a cool system later on when people start dumping in really higher level weapons and things like that. And it's I don't know if is it supposed to be completely random or no?
If you put in like so if you put in say 4 swords, you're going to get a sword back. A better one. Basically, if you put 4 of the same item, maybe it was just that was what I was getting. I don't know. You can put dies in as well and get a new die in there. So you can put like different stuff in there.
Actually, you guys at Maslow, you guys spoke to Eric Flanham, right? Who actually did this?
I did very briefly. So we had an opportunity to ask a couple questions about the updates for the beta. And I think you have a quote card for it?
Yeah. So Eric said, he said the Mystic Forge uses a combination of random and non-random recipes. For example, if I throw in 4 rare swords into the forge, it will return a random sword to me with a chance for that sword to be substantially better. He says there are also specific items that can be created by throwing 4 very specific items into the forge with no random involved at all. So, I mean, it seems like it could be a really cool system. I mean, it could potentially be frustrating with the random factor, but I think that's actually what makes it cool if it didn't have that mystery behind it. But
especially if you're a trade skiller, and it's nicely situated for that. If you're making a bunch of a bunch of stuff, and you're like, well, I don't want to put more of this up on the trading post. You can just put it away and make something new, and you can use stuff that's come out of there. I'm pretty sure I could use stuff that had come out back in as well. So if you got something out of it that you weren't that keen on, you could put it all back in to get something else again.
I mean, it's a better idea than just throwing your old gear into the bank. I mean, it's kind of a fun way to possibly like just get something cool.
Yeah. It's like a little mini game you play, what do I do with this? Do I sell it to the vendor? Do I sell it on the trading post? Do I salvage it for materials, or do I, gamble away in the Mystic Forge? It's, it's a fun little extra thing. Why not have it,
And then
as pathetic and nerdy as it is, I quite like the little animation that it does. You got the four slots on either side, and when they put it in, it all disappears up the forge and it comes back in.
Yes,
it's all very nicely put together.
I guess on the side of the non-random stuff, I mean, I'm sure we're going to see Guild Wars 2-head pop its. I'm sure the ZAM network will be spitting out that database quite soon, and we'll have all the recipes in there. So they'll have that covered. Yeah.
I think like Richie was saying. I think the cool thing, it's another area of the game. It's another game within the game, but it's not required. I played another free-to-play MMO where there's an anvil system for upgrading your gear, and you had to upgrade to be competitive. Whereas this is something you can optionally choose to do, and it can be fun. You can experiment, or like people said, if you have extra crafted items, you can choose to just throw them in there and see what you're going to get back. Or if you can look it up in the database, you can get back a very specific item that has maybe a particular look that you really want, but it's not required by the game, so it doesn't add to a grind. It's optional, and therefore people opt in, and therefore it's typically fun. Where it becomes unfun is when you're forced to deal with it and craft 50,000 swords that you keep dumping in there to upgrade up some pyramid until you finally get the Uber Sword of Uberness. And then at that point, then it really becomes not a lot of fun. But this way, it keeps it fresh, keeps it random.
Hey, how do we know? How do we know you're not going to need the Uber sort of Uber though, right? I mean, high-end crafters are going to love this, especially when they start figuring out the Uber swords and what components to put in there to get out of it, which I think is great for crafters. I love that kind of thing. But how do we know that it's not going to really spit some things out that we're going to need for high-end PvP to really be competitive?
Well, because the game is not set up to really be gear-based at max level.
That's true.
the stats on level 80 gear are going to be roughly on this plateau, and so you might be able to get something ultra cool looking out of this thing, but from all the information we've seen so far, there's going to be no advantage.
Is that going to be enough of a draw to sell that stuff and make good money for crafters? Probably, I guess.
Absolutely.
If they have unique skins, absolutely.
Huh.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. It's Richie just said. It's if the gear looks cool enough, like when you do the tournament stuff, you get these chests, and depending on how far you advance in the tournament, you get better looking gear, and the gear looks really cool. Like for example, like for the warrior, the default armor gets kind of chainmail looky, but when you start progressing the tournament, you start getting plate drops that look really really cool and have kind of sharp jagged edges, and it looks totally different when you're geared up versus looking like everybody else. So I think I personally am a big fan of a customization system where you acquire gear because you want to look cooler, not so that you can chop someone's head off in half the time where they can chop off yours.
Yeah, if they created a system now where you're kind of relying on an RNG or a random number generator to get the best gear, I'd be extraordinarily disappointed, because they've so frequently come out saying, hey, we're not having a random number generator in crafting. You're not going to proc and get a better weapon because we don't believe in that sort of system. So I think it would go against a lot of what they've said and just kind of disappoint a lot of fans in a bad way if they did that.
Did anybody get to see the end of beta event this time around? I actually missed it. I did not see it. I know a few people were a little disappointed on the first one. Scott, what did they do for this one?
Well, we didn't have a glitching Monty Python reference in this one, so that probably helped. Which was what happened to the first one. Yeah, I was there. It was the what was it? The branded creatures, the dragon. We had a dragon invasion, basically. Dragon forces invaded, and we had a giant dragon flying.
Where did it take place?
In the sky.
Plains of Ashford.
Yeah, Plains of Ashford, just outside Black Citadel, not far from there. And the sort of mutated. What happened was that the players could get branded as well, so their whole appearance changed, and you could do these electric black and purple jaggedy looks going on, and then you have to go around beating your own friends up because they were flagged then. And of course, everybody hated having to do that. So people just ganging up and just beating the snot out of folks as he's got the brand, wallop, dead. And then there was creature spawn. We came across a level 80 champion, and we never downed it because basically seen zero glancing. Was
that the Scorpion, the Destroyer?
Yes.
Yeah.
That we couldn't put a touch on it. There was hundreds of us, just particle effects going crazy, and its health was like, nope, not moving. No,
not today, kids. Not today.
Not gonna do it.
Keep it coming. I'm here all week. It was crazy. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun stuff, and I didn't get to see the dragon overhead because I was too busy trying to catch people to kill them. But the screenshots out and about. Have
ArenaNet said anything about like what they're doing with these end of the events like this? Is this like a test bed that you think that they're gonna start doing these like throughout the game just randomly, or kind of announce that they can kind of launch off these big events that kind of happen in a specific area and do specific things? Because that sounds very different. The one that I got to do, which was in the closed like press beta, was just a couple giants in Divinity's Reach, fight them, blah, 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 blah. It was like done. It wasn't nearly as intricate and crazy fun as this sounds. Do you think they're testing systems to kind of shoot off random events like this?
I would doubt that it was so much that as just testing the capacity of their servers to calculate so much going on. Because, I mean, you have basically everybody on a server cramming into one map and going nuts. Like Scott was saying, you have 100 people shooting at a Scorpion, or, I'm sorry, when you have that going on, like, you're doing a lot more computation on the server side. And so they want to, I assume, make sure that they can handle that, so that if there is a big event, if you're going against the Shadow Behemoth or wherever, that they're keeping up and making things run smoothly. Because, I mean, even with all the particle effects and all the player-on-player and everything that was going on, it was still basically smooth for me. I mean, I don't think my FPS ever dropped below like 15, which isn't great, but it wasn't the slideshow that it really should have been at that point.
How many?
Go
ahead, Rich.
I was gonna say they definitely, are showing off that they have tech to kind of spawn these things, and but ArenaNet is known for doing these kind of events, and they love putting their thinking caps on to do something creative to really blow people away. They put in extra time after hours and stuff to make things like really funny April Fool's jokes on the website with the whole commando profession they did a year ago, and so they're known for doing these things, and I just think it shows off their creativity and the tech that they have behind it. So I hope we see more stuff like this post launch.
I think the fact though that you can get Kralkatorrik flying over your head, I don't think they do that just for a beta weekend. You know what I mean? That's got to be something that's there for a reason other than.
Yeah. Isn't that?
Look at that.
Yeah, that was not Kralkatorrik. Just for the record.
I'm sorry.
Shatterer.
The Shatterer.
Sorry. The Shatterer. I'm sorry.
I think if it had been Kralkatorrik, you couldn't have missed it. It would just cover the entire map.
You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, it glitched a little on our server, and we were on an overflow. Surprise, surprise, and it didn't actually start until I think much later than it was supposed to get going. So it wasn't quite as involved in fun, but it was still fun, and things running around, craziness, havoc, fun stuff.
What anything stand out to any of you guys that kind of I don't want to say disappointing, but any blaring things that you guys think really need to be looked at, really need to be fixed? I noticed they added some tooltips and things to help me get out of PvP a little easier. There's a little thing that told me how to get out of it now.
Yeah,
I know. Nice.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I
think it'd be nice if they updated the tooltips on the ability so that when you take certain traits that it's actually reflected on your ability bars. I think that would be really useful. And I think they improved some of the language around some of the traits, but it's not really clear how some of them work. And it's a lot of stuff to go through if you're not familiar with all the traits for a given class. So it can be hard without kind of more quantitative information to look at. It can be hard to really judge. Well, this talent trait says it increases damage under certain conditions, but it doesn't say what extent that it's the damage buff is going to be. So is it worth taking or not taking? And and it's hard to expect. Like I said, expect people to do math. Like some folks will break out calculators and figure this out. But it'd be nice when we slot traits if you could just see the cooldown updates and damage updates or whatever on your ability bar on your on your character sheet, so you don't have to guess.
Richie?
Yeah, I was just gonna comment on your tooltip thing. Like I was one of the people that thinks that they needed to actually put more of those kind of things in. I did feel like that they kept getting the same tooltips over and over again with no real great way to say I already read that one, don't show that one again. But overall, I just think there was a lot more polish this time around. A lot of new things in the interface, new way to get into world versus world, which was even quicker than going to the mists, and just a lot of little things like that just it felt a lot more polished this time around. I was happy to see all these, and there's not one big thing that stands out in my mind, but tons of little things I noticed that were changed and altered, and it was really cool.
Would any of you guys like to see they made that that black bar when you open up the world versus world menu, it says enter world versus world, you click it and boom, you're in WW. Would any of you guys like to see that switch to when you're in world versus world, you bring up that menu that says get out of world versus world, click get me out, just flip it, reverse it.
Mm-hmm. That'd be nice.
Anything else, Elizabeth? You got anything?
I think they really hit most of it. I mean, just better information, but things are a lot more improved, I see. And thank goodness that there's going to be a way to raise the guild cap, because I know just with ours it's been ridiculous.
Yes, it is. We're going to talk about that in a few.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they're definitely going to change it, so that's good. Anything else, Mr. Scott Hawks?
No, it really was. It was really obvious very quick after starting how many more tooltips there were. It was really pinging up at you quite regularly. So we've talked for weeks about how more tooltips may be needed rather than just pushing things through. And it was obvious that they were trying to add a little bit more support for you as you were going through. But what I'm more interested in, I think, is what Elizabeth asked us.
I don't actually know about that. I think the feature I'm most looking forward to is the preview item feature, was what I was waiting to say, because, oh my lord, for a game that's supposed to be about appearances, it is so frustrating to see an icon and think, wow, that looks kind of cool, and put it on, and, I was wearing this, negligee. It was just not at all what the item looked like in the preview, in the icon. So I was really not thrilled. So the sooner that gets in, the happier I will be.
I did like 2 or 3 times. Hit control click and shift click. Like,
Yeah. I'm like, why isn't this working?
I want to
Why
buy.
can't I
Now,
see
these
this?
2 bows are similar, and I want to see which one looks cooler, and it won't let me see.
Exactly.
So yeah, that I know that's planned, but yeah, that definitely we need that in there.
So much.
They have said that that's coming too, didn't they? Just talk about that
Yes.
this week. That is in the works. Just so we don't have an exact time.
Before launch.
Before launch, I think they actually officially said. I think we're talking about that later in the show as well. Later in the show, we're 50 minutes into later in the show. But all right, overall experience. Overall, beta weekend 2. 1 thumbs up, 2 thumbs up, 1 down, 2 down. What do you give? Wow, the entire Brady bunch gives it 2 thumbs up. Good deal. All right, want to take a quick break and tell you guys about Netflix. Yes, we got a great deal going on right now with Netflix. Go over to netflix.com/Gamebreaker TV to sign up for a free 30-day trial today. Yes, I said free 30-day trial. This is for their streaming service. It is $8 a month after that. If you enjoy the service, I think you're really going to love it. I am loving it. Of course, yes, I know. You guys know I'm watching Ancient Aliens. I talk about it all the time. I'm still watching it. I did try watching a few other things. I started watching this Stephen Hawking's Into the Universe, which I hadn't seen. I watched it. Oh, this one's wacky. This Dan Aykroyd Unplugged on UFOs. I started watching that the other night. You just gotta watch the beginning of it. It's so intense. What happened to Dan Aykroyd? Is he just like playing the Ghostbusters thing? Like, oh, I was in Ghostbusters. I'll talk about UFOs.
What did you do, Ray? What did you do?
Really? And it's really bad. It's really not very good. Any guys see Prometheus, by the way? Anybody?
Not yet.
No.
Please don't go. Please don't go. Please save your money.
Wow.
You don't like it?
It stole my money. It's terrible.
I've heard such different reviews on that. Some people are like, well, if you check your brain at the door, it's awesome. And other people, no, just never, ever, ever. And some people are saying, well, it was Avatar all over again. I mean, just a repeat of a story.
Just bad
Avatar,
acting.
such high praise.
Bad directing, bad acting. I love Ridley Scott. I think I've lost all hope, though. This was like the one thing I was going to be like, Ridley, please bring it back. It was bad. It was bad. Bad acting, just bad. You know it's bad when the audience is laughing at things and you're sitting there. My wife's like looking at me and I'm like, I don't think you're supposed to be laughing. I don't think it's meant. But my wife was just giggling at stuff and I was like, I don't think it's supposed to be funny. Like they don't think that's funny. It's ridiculous. That's how bad. Like it's like
someone just died there. For God's sake, you're not supposed to be laughing there.
I mean, there's this part at the end when Dave is at the cyborg and he takes the head is chopped off. She puts the head in the bag. It's ridiculous and zips it up. It's so dumb. Maybe it's supposed to be funny. I don't know. It's ridiculous. Such a letdown. Such a letdown. I don't know. You definitely save your money. You watch Ancient Aliens. Totally watch it. The Great Pyramid. I'm sure there's like there's awesome sci-fi right on the Netflix. But seriously, if you guys haven't checked out Netflix, the streaming service, I urge you to check it out. Free 30-day trial, netflix.com/Gamebreaker TV. $8 a month after that. It's only $8 a month to watch everything that they have on the streaming service on demand. You watch it on your Xbox, your PS3, your Wii, your iPad, your iPhone, your Android, like every device under the sun. It's awesome. And if you don't enjoy it, you can always cancel it within those 30 days and no questions asked, and you won't be billed after that. But I really do think when you sign up, you're going to be surprised. So check it out, netflix.com/Gamebreaker TV. All right, so also this week, if we didn't have enough to talk about with the beta weekend event, the devs from ArenaNet have jump on the old Reddit to answer a bunch of community questions on Reddit. Seriously, how much was there on it? It was insane.
It was an incredible wall of text.
It was like hundreds, right?
It was ginormous.
Yeah, I don't know how many there were, but it was a lot of text.
It was a lot.
Let's put it this way: Jason covered that for the site and the article, and he like put it all in order, which did a great job. And it was like 22,000 words.
Yeah, just scrolling for days.
All the fluff taken out. That was 22,000 words.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? We took out some of the good bits, like we do here on the GuildCast, and we're going to talk about them. So first up, John Peters talking about how the guild cap is going to be increased, which we were just talking about. So Yeah, this is he said, just got a message from the guild guys that it isn't influence, but will be some other factor that determines guild size allowed. Also, it is not in the next beta weekend event. All right, so I think influence would have been a bad move. So I think that's good news to hear that it's not going to be based on influence. It kind of suck if half your members got to wait around while the guild just sat and grinded up enough influence to get in, right? But I mean, how do you guys think this is going to work? I mean, the system, it's going to work for like, what about large guilds like the Gamebreaker crew? We've got, what do we have? Four guilds? Four.
Four guilds are up to now.
So what do you think is going to happen?
That's how I spent. You know why I wasn't in Gandara Field? Because that's how I spent my weekend. It was sorting out 4 guilds at a time. Honestly, please, ArenaNet. So many lovely things for us. Please, can you make it easier for us to do large guilds?
But that's the thing. They do make it sound like you're actually going to have to work towards having a larger guild, right? I mean, we don't know what the system is, but it sounds like we're gonna have to earn. Like, how are we gonna do that day one? It's gonna be such a pain in the butt.
I can't wrap my brain around this one. I don't know why exactly. You know, I tend to try to really, you know, look at all sides of an issue and figure it out. But I'm having a hard time with this one, and I'm trying to think of a compelling gameplay mechanism that would actually be fun. About like, all right, yeah, let's earn this together so we can, you know. But in the meantime, other people are sitting out of the guild, so. I don't know. This is a tough one.
It's gonna be like it's gonna be like when you're that kid in like grammar school and you're like the chubby one and like you're playing kickball and like you're like the last one to get picked. You're just like
B team.
Yeah. You just gotta sit on the sideline and kind of. I guess I gotta wait to get into the WA Space Guild because there's not enough room.
And also, if you're in one of the other guilds or waiting for the main guild to get big enough, what are you gonna do in the other guild? Like, because it's not worth really building the other guild up because you're waiting to get into the other guild. And also, Arena, hello there, how are you doing? Please put a roster total count on the guild pane. There is not a total number of members on the guild pane. What you have to do... Wait, I'm
going to do my impression of Scott. Hang on, let me get on my soapbox. ArenaNet, please.
Pay attention to me.
I'd actually be on my knees doing that. Please. Because what I'd have to do is, because there's a 100-member limit, so when people are asking me if they can get in the guild, especially when it's like me and my wife want to come in the guild, I'd have to go to the ranks tab, click on each rank individually, and then add up how many people were in each rank. And then do the total, and then, okay, there's 3 left, so I can get you 2 in, good. And then I've got to keep a note that there's 1 left on that guild. The other 3, I'll have to check in a little bit. Yeah. And then, of course, people want to, and if people couldn't get everybody in the same guild, then I'll come back, oh, can I be in that other guild as well? Because my friend's in that guild and I want to talk to them. And then I'm shuffling around, and honestly, it drives you up the wall. So, yeah, a way to expand guild size, because 100 people in one guild is really limited.
Every day I'm shuffling. Elizabeth, what do they do? What do you think they should do? Should they just like say, hey, no system, you don't have to build up to it, 500,000 people a guild? What? I mean,
I'm assuming that they're like giving people a reason to want it, so saying like, so that if you're advertising, hey, we have a 700-member guild or whatever it is, that people realize that that's a really cool thing, as opposed to being just, oh, you have 700 really inactive players. So I understand why they would want some sort of cap on it, but I actually really assumed it was going to be influence, because that way, even though it really sucks at startup, like over time it makes sense, because you don't need a big guild unless you have a lot of active players. Otherwise, you just trim the excess. So I really have no idea on this one.
And the other thing is if it's something else you have to earn anyway, then that's not going to take away the difficulty of having the guild be limited to start with and then having to expand it. So you're still going to have that problem at the start anyway. So if it's going to be something that's not guild earn, and when you have a system influence, which is the system of earning things through your guild, I'm very confused on what that would be. If you can earn it by how many people can turn up and dance in one square, and then suddenly you got the guild, your guild expanded.
Maybe.
Great, I'm all for that.
Yeah, we can totally do that.
I mean,
Yeah,
maybe.
we can do that.
Maybe. What is it? What did you say? It.
Monetization. Say it, Gary. Monetization.
Microtransaction.
But who pays for that, though? You know, is that the guild master's responsibility?
Yeah, is that going to be a guild leader thing? Or?
I mean, that's the part. I mean, I would agree with you that it definitely smells like that a
Hey,
bit. But
I'm running Gamebreaker, but if you
guys
guys want a large guild, go to netflix.com/GameBreakerTV and sign up. It's the only way we're gonna get you all to pay for the size of the guild we're gonna have to create for all of you guys. So there's your guild dues are due. Go to GameBreaker.tv. That's how you pay your dues.
Seriously, if
maybe we're just like you know we're probably like you know the 0.1% here that are gonna have over 100 people day one.
I didn't say that.
Because there's tons of alliances from Guild Wars 1 that are going to want to come over, and since there's no alliance mechanic in Guild Wars 2, you're already going to have some guilds with like 1,000 people that want to get in. So I think it's going to be a bigger problem than that. There's a lot of people already formed, the community's already formed who they want to play with, and this is going to be very restrictive.
Anyone else have any other theories of what they could possibly do that wouldn't be as sort of, I don't know, just painful?
I do not know how they're going to work this and make it in a way that it feels like you're going to grow your guild sufficiently to meet your requirements, but also not feel that you got enough people in there to start with. Because if the idea is that you're going to grow a guild, that's fine, but you need to have enough room to start with if you've got a large guild coming to you. And this game is bringing people from other games who are going to come over en masse. So they're not going to be happy to get in the guild. They'll say, okay, we've got 500 people who want to be in the guild. We've got to make 5 guilds, put you all in each of them. Okay, you want to be with your friend? All right, we'll make a list of friends who want to be together in which guild. And then put that all together. And then the leader of each guild is actually an officer who reports to somebody else who's in a different guild that's just the officers who are the leaders of the... it's a real, like, ball mess. If... I don't know how they're going to sort it. I really don't. If it stays with the restrictions that it has now, if you're not able to quickly grow that guild to the size, and I mean quick, I'm not sure what you're going to do. Because the only way to make it work is to have very sort of a quick and easy way of a cross-guild sort of interaction, like the alliance like system. But I honestly don't know. It's the one part of the game that frustrates me. And has on it the last couple of beta weekends. I love the Gamebreaker community, and we've had a really good time. But the actual management of that community is so tough with the tools that you've got at the moment. Really is.
Well, we're gonna have to keep an eye on it.
Scott Hawks to do it. Scott will do it while he's in the dungeon, the Dove dungeon.
I was.
Pillars. And he'll be moving people around the 6 different guilds.
I actually was. I jumped off a 50-foot ledge onto another, and then did 3 invites, and then got a request saying my friend's in the other one, and fixed that before I jumped onto a ledge and dodged some rolling bombs.
Well, now if they put an achievement in the game for that, they'd be set.
Exactly.
You jumped off, added 3 people in the guild, and then avoided the 20 boulders. Achievement unlocked. Guild. Indiana Guildmaster Jones. There's your. I don't know. This one is confusing a lot of people. I think we're gonna have to keep an eye on it. Hopefully, we get some more info soon, and then they actually give us some insight as to how they're gonna do it. But it does sound from his statement that there's gonna be some sort of factor. We just don't know what, because he actually says some sort of factor. All right. John also gave us a long post on why he made changes to the trait tiers. We pulled out. These are some of the key points. He said, best builds were all 30, 10, 10, 10, 10. This system is much easier to balance. Opportunity costs are what make interesting choices. Option shock. And putting 30 points into a line left you with a climax of picking the 3rd most interesting trait, which did not feel so good. And said, finally, these are not final balance numbers or often even the final trait's functionality. And we will be iterating on this system as we move towards release. What do you think, Richie? Do you agree with these with his points? How do you feel about the new trait system?
Yeah, we talked about this last week quite a bit, and he actually hit upon a number of the things that we said last week. But also, I mean, I didn't even think about it that, the fact that it's kind of backwards. You're choosing like the best traits up front, and then when you hit level 70, 75, 80, you're choosing really your third best major trait, and that's not a kind of exciting progression. I like that also in that post, they made a quote from someone who posted, I think, on the Penny Arcade forums, where they were liking this whole thing to having an ice cream shop that focuses on trying to make as many flavors as possible. And they come out with like 100 flavors, but only 3 of them are any good. The rest are horrible. And most people are going to only choose one of these 3 when they go to this ice cream shop, except for the weirdos who like avocado ice cream or something like that.
I was going with lobster ice cream, by the way. That's what I was
lobster, yeah, no good.
Have you ever had it?
Avocado's better. Actually.
No, I've never had it.
I've had lobster ice cream.
Lobster avocado. You guys are missing out.
Okay. But if you compare that to an ice cream shop that focuses on just making 10 really good ice cream flavors, then you actually have more options of good ice cream than the shop that does it. So I thought it was an interesting analogy that, there's the quote that, having restrictions breeds creativity. And I think that's part of the system too. You're going to get more viable builds this way than you will just opening up any combination.
Oh, Richie, you really think this is going to open up more builds?
I think it's going to open up more viable builds.
Because I totally understand from an ArenaNet's perspective, this will make their life easier. But like the number one selling point for me for Guild Wars 2, the number one thing was I could roll a character, level to 80, go right into PvP and unlock everything, and I could spec myself and trait myself to be my own unique snowflake that fit my playstyle preferences for that evening, whatever the heck I wanted, right? And it was like the old trait system was like a Chinese menu. You can order anywhere off the 12 pages on the menu. If you want to order 3 beef dishes, go right ahead. You don't have to do the appetizer, main course, entree, dessert thing. And I feel like by going back to what they're doing, this trait tiering, they're essentially doing what every other game does, which is it's a fixed pre-menu. You have to order the appetizer, then you have a constrained list of appetizers, then I'll order off a constrained list of entrees until you can finally get to the dessert, especially that that warm chocolate cake that they make, which is just awesome. But you need to consume the rest of the meal. I'd rather just like walk into a Chinese restaurant and say, I want this stuff over here. And I totally get that it can create balance problems. But I think that's like part of like the traits should be made to be reasonably equal or attractive. I know they won't be perfectly balanced, but I feel like ArenaNet's kind of taken the easy way out on this. And also, there's also the weird thing, like, did they actually put the right traits in the right bucket? And I looked at some of the classes. Okay, the trait selection kind of makes sense, and then for other trait lines, it really doesn't make sense. And the other thing too is from a balance perspective, there are class mechanics or sigils that are more problematic from a balance perspective than I think the traits are, So anyway, I'm kind of bummed. I mean,
I'm a little bummed about this as well. I mean, yeah, I know. I'm just thinking about that lobster, right? You can go with the avocado lobster ice cream for dessert. You go with chocolate cake. I mean, come on, Ed. We talked about this on last week's show a lot, and that was definitely the big fear is that putting these more restrictions makes a lot of sense from ArenaNet's standpoint. I mean. I don't know. It's definitely, and I think this was the why they had kind of backlash on the community. Had a little bit of a backlash is because, like we said last week, is I think what a lot of people are afraid of is we're getting boxed in a little bit more, and some of these things are kind of becoming a little bit more like some of the other MMORPGs that we're used to.
I think it seems the decisions come down to, and we talked about this as well, is that there's a lot of people fresh to MMOs in general who would have gone into that and gone, oh my god, what do I do now? Like, where's this going? And having some guidance in the game for that, I think, is why it's in there more than really a matter of choice. However,
but isn't there a way to do that, like, and give you a little hand holding possibly, but still give the somebody who I don't want to say is more advanced, but somebody who wants the freedom? I feel like this is more from a a control standpoint than anything.
Yeah, and Gary, I totally agree. Like you're bringing up a good point. There's a big difference between the system is too confusing and the system's too easy to game or build overpowered builds, right? And like if you're worried about solving this problem over here, which is an education standpoint, then you can do things like what Rift does or other games where you've got cookie cutter builds. You can choose a cookie cutter build if you want, or you can be your own snowflake. But the cookie cutter stuff is there for people who are looking for some kind of guidance or directive guidance or helpful information. I feel like by skipping out on this over here, they're not really ever going to balance the traits. I mean, there's still going to be some traits that are overpowered, but they're kind of sidestepping the whole issue by, kind of chunking up the traits into different tiers. And like I said, I think that, and this is still the case. I made the point before, for being a Beta Weekend 2 event, the class balance is reasonable, but there's still things from a class mechanics perspective which cause a lot of issues. Like for example, the Mesmer, they pop out a bunch of clones. And there are a couple things to counteract and figure out which person is the Mesmer. You can obviously by their movement and their buffs, and you can see the little icon over their head. And I actually found out after. What's that?
That's getting
fixed.
fixed.
That's going to be fixed on the AMA thread. And then the other trick, and I don't know how long this is going to last either. If you put the target marker on the Mesmer, even if they switch places with their pets, you can still the marker stays on the same target, not on their clones and stuff. But the whole point being the fact that they can force you to do a hard target switch periodically. That's downtime for your DPS. And I think this is stuff like this is a problematic mechanic, or some of the way that the warrior burst abilities synergize with some of the sigils, and it's the same way for the thief too. With their Heartseeker and some of the sigils and stuff. That stuff is more problematic than anything else. I would say actually that the trait tiering is addressing part of the problem, but the most glaring issues, when you watch people's videos, it's things like sigils and it's things like the base class mechanics that need to get looked at. So, and like I said, I'm totally for it. The game is overwhelmingly complex. Like when I stepped into the mist the first time, I was overwhelmed. There are like all these vendors. There's like 50 million rune sets. There are all these trait lines I can take and all these traits. But I think that's just part of the complexity of the game. And if people opt into going into the mist, there probably should be some, education material telling them, hey, listen, you're unlocked to 80, but so you can see everything. But what that means is let's explain some of this stuff to you versus trying to kind of restrain or constrict the way that the system works. Because then really the trait system becomes vertical, just like the talent trees in any other game, where you have to work your way up to 11, 21, or 31 point talents, and you may not like the stuff you have to go from 1 to 30 before you get to 31. And I've always disliked that in games, and I feel like they're like I said, they're kind of doing that here.
I think there could be a mid ground in it where basically you've got. I mean, I know maybe it has more drop-down menus, and there's plenty of those in there already. But the idea of just having panes where, as Dad said, if you've got some presets like okay, go into this, and this is going to focus you on this type of play. You've got this will be a support role set up, or this will be the damage, and have it there for you, and then then it's there if you want. Would have been perhaps a way of doing it in which you've still got that as I said, the education side of it, the fact that you've got something that's just there for quick if you just want to run in and jump around. But for people who want to sit there and spend hours tweaking their builds, it would still have been there. So it feels like we were maybe we've gone from one end of the spectrum to another a little, and perhaps there was a little bit more mid ground.
Ed, didn't you get the memo that we're a bunch of fanboys here? You kind of like.
Yeah, I can't talk to you anymore, man. I mean, please, how dare you?
Elizabeth and Richie, like their facial expressions are like totally blank. Like we're not talking to this guy.
No, it's not that at all. It's.
I'm just kidding.
I like having the other perspective to it. I like to kind of debate this. I'm just a little bit of afraid that if they leave the system wide open like it was, that we're going to run into a situation like we did in the original Guild Wars, where they literally had so many nightmares trying to balance that because there were way too many options that a lot of the skills got just chopped, nerfed. There were tons of skills that you just never used in it, and I think you're going to have cookie cutter builds no matter how you build your system, and I don't know. I'm not sure that the old system gave you as much freedom as you might think. I mean, I don't know. That's just my perspective on it.
Well,
I think that point's taken. I didn't play the original Guild Wars 1, but people are in the Guild Wars 2 forums are frequently referencing class balance or specific spec issues that never got fixed after years, and they would sit there and steamroll their specs. So that's certainly problematic. Hopefully in Guild Wars 2 I really believe aside from getting the horizontal content stuff right, which I think they're doing a really good job with, is just getting the class balancing down. That's really, really tough.
I mean, I think the important thing on a show like this and why we do this, it's great to have a different perspective and an objective look on it. It's like that as far as being critical, because like you said, they're still in beta, so they're still, they're still tweaking. I mean, the whole trade system wasn't in beta weekend 1, so it's changed that dramatically. It could change that dramatically to beta weekend 3. Who knows? We have no idea. So I think it's good to discuss this kind of thing.
Yeah, it'll change. They're going to iterate more on it. We'll see some, and like some of the things might not have made that much sense for this to go around, because this is a change only like three weeks or 4 weeks in the making. So yeah, they'll iterate, and I'm sure the next beta weekend event is going to be even different than what we saw here. Who knows?
So next up, John had this to say about spectator mode. He said, "We intend to support spectator mode at some point, but right now we are focused on core features to get the game in your hands so that you as the player can help us determine the course of future updates," which I think everyone was expecting this. I mean, it'd be kind of crazy for them to focus on spectator mode right now, even though here we at Gamebreaker.tv might be quite biased and really would love a spectator mode before the game even comes out, but that's just because we want to make shows. I don't know. Hopefully it's still something we're going to get at some point. Hopefully it's not something on the back burner. Is this important to any of you guys? I mean, the esports perspective of covering PvP, WDubs?
If they want to go the esports route, it's necessary. I mean, you can't not have it. It's really not an option. I mean, even if it comes in at launch or after launch, it's something that has to be there eventually, I feel.
And the devs have already stated that esports is definitely something that they want to get
They've got their eyes on, yeah.
Hopefully
so it's got to be on the way. Has to be. We want everything now.
Do it now. We want it all. Next up,
now.
Mark Ferguson had this to say. He said, "We're doing everything we can to ensure that anyone who can run the game can participate in WDubs. We've made a number of optimizations since the last event to improve performance, and we will continue to do so. Hopefully, people should have a little better performance in WDubs this time around." I think we talked about this earlier in the show. I think almost everybody across the board feels like we saw some improvements with really big fights. I feel like there was more people on my screen than ever before, more particle effects firing off with very little slowdown. Are most of you guys having to jump in and turn down your actual graphic settings when you're jumping from PvE to PvP?
Nope. Not at all.
No?
The only reason I did is because we were streaming and I was getting some problem with the lag, but it turned out it was completely due to the upstream. It wasn't. My computer was running smooth. It made no difference. Really didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I didn't have to change at all when we got into WBW. It looked great. Really did.
Next up, John Peters said, "We're going to make a number of improvements to camera between now and ship. First person is something we want to do. Might be a post-release thing. So for all you screenshotters out there, hopefully it'll be there." She's praying.
I want that now.
Please.
Really? That's that
Please.
important to you?
Well, it is for me because, I mean, screenshots are a big part of writing articles, which is always a nice thing to have. And, like, underwater, you can't do /sleep. So you're going to have yourself in pictures if you're taking pictures underwater. Like, so it's something that isn't, like, obviously a huge thing, but it would be an extraordinarily nice touch that I know a lot of people have been very vocal in asking for.
Yeah, you know what else is... Oh, sorry. You know what else I found interesting about it is I had a couple times where people came up and said, "Hey, look at this new armor I got, or this new weapon I got," and they're standing right in front of me, and I'm like, I'm trying to get my character's head out of the way so I can see it. So just in interacting with other people, it's a problem not having this. I'm not going to play in that mode, but it's nice to actually look at your surroundings and be able to interact with people without your fat head in the way.
And also for drawing the camera back far enough, I'm very. Being an old school sort of like tank, I'm very used to having a good sort of area around me that I can have good spatial awareness of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And at times, especially in PvP, actually, at times, and it's quite fun at times because people can actually sneak up on you. But there are times I'd like to pull back just a bit more, just so I can get a bit more of a feel of what's around me. It was a bit difficult at the time. So yeah, maybe I know we try to get character focused and try and get sort of into the game involving, but I still think there's room to pull that camera back just a bit more, please.
I agree.
Next up, when John Peters was asked about engineers getting more weapons and weapon kits, which a lot of people have been talking about, he said, "Yes, Both at some point. Any guys playing an engineer? I mean, they seem to have the least amount of weapon options in the game currently, right?
They do, but that's kind of augmented by the weapon kits because it's essentially swapping in a whole new weapon set every time you equip it, but I can see why people would want a little more freedom with their base skills. And that's something that I'm sure over time, especially with expansions, every profession is going to be getting more weapons and more skills. I mean, that seems like something that they're hinting at. So I'm sure things are going to be changed eventually. I just don't know if he's saying that, like, yeah, by the time launch comes around or by the time this comes around, like, they will have more, so...
Do you guys think from this... Go ahead.
I was going to say, are we getting more information about something coming like right now, or is he just taking the safe answer? Yeah, someday we'll have it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Eventually, 3 years, whatever.
When it's ready. But do you think...
Point robots serving you as it happens, yeah.
Do you think from his answer that it's other classes are going to get more weapon options, or is engineer kind of seem like a priority right now? Because right now they're just stuck with pistols, a rifle, and shield, right?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
You think we're gonna see more across different classes? Probably.
Yeah, at some point.
Yeah, there's the safe answer.
It really is the at some point thing. I mean, because there aren't a lot of other weapons that would make a ton of sense for an engineer. So, just thematically and the way that different weapons function across the board, those make the most sense at the moment. If they add more weapons to the game at a later date, other weapons might also fit the engineer's kind of groove better. So
Could you see them giving
it's really
engineers?
something.
Could you see them giving them any melee options?
I don't know.
Is a flamethrower considered melee?
Yeah, I mean, because they already have that, and that's pretty cool in close quarters. I mean, I'd love being able to just bring that out and whoop people up. But, I mean, I don't really see engineers running around with a sword, per se. So, I don't know.
Chainsaw.
Great big mech gloves.
Yeah.
Chainsaw wrenches would be nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
You know,
Wield a wrench.
get a little metal cap with a little light. You know.
Yeah.
Miner's helm.
I would love that to be a helm in the game.
Next up, he said, give Scepter a try. I tried to make this the ranged option, particularly in WW for Guardian. Mr. Resident Guardian expert, Mr. Scott Hawks. Did you play around with a Scepter build?
I promised I wouldn't play the Guardian. So.
But you
But
did.
that was the one caveat. The whole reason that you could was that the scepter was in there so you could test it.
Yeah, I'd like to thank ArenaNet for giving me a complete excuse to play my Guardian this week. Yeah, I did. I tried it out. It does make a difference, especially in WVW when you can close range with other skills and combinations, but with that you don't have to switch them out as much. You don't have to switch back and forward as that cooldown drops down to close ground when you got the scepter. You can just get into range and then start flying away. And you can also there's a snare on it, so you can catch them up, slow them down, and then descend on them in your numbers. So yeah, scepter does add it has a nice little extra flavour to the Guardian. Oh Guardian.
Oh Guardian. Ed, did you get to try the Scepter on your Guardian at all?
Yeah, I did. You know, and like I said, my impression from the first beta weekend event, the problem out of the box is the Guardian is extremely supportive and defensive by nature. And, you know, if you want to make it be more offensive, you actually have to sacrifice a lot of the core mechanics of the class to the point where you become very squishy. You know, and I saw a video circulate. It was hilarious. A Guardian was running around with like 11k HP, and he was, you know, chain critting people for a few thousand and burning them down. But it just, you know, you sacrifice so much to do that. Whereas with other classes, you can expect to be pretty effective from a DPS perspective, but not become, you know, completely new to the rest of your capabilities. So thankfully in this BWE, it seemed like the damage in general was improved for the Guardian. I don't know specific numbers, but it felt much better. And then, you know, like Scott was saying, having that ranged weapon was critical, because there are times when you're sitting on a control point or on a wall or underneath, you know, on or below a wall where you have to engage from range. And like Scott said, you can put out that ranged route, which is a good tool. And I actually found the Scepter, combined with a Focus, gave you pretty good range capability. You have 4 long-range abilities to work with. It seemed to, like, the spammable 1 key for the Scepter, they actually improved the travel time of the orb, because before it was, like, very slow. Like, you can kind of say, I'm shooting a ball of you. You can kind of move out of the way and it won't hit you. Whereas now, it's like the travel time, it's like, it's decent. The ball moves like this, so you could get out of the way, but you'll still end up as the Guardian, you know, landing the blows a lot on your target, which is good.
Next up, the worst possible news
Seriously.
to come out of the Reddit Q&A. Mike Ferguson said, "Sit jumping. I don't know why, but it seems like everybody loves it, except the guy that introduced it. I'll actually be sad to see it go." That's it. They took out sit jumping. This game sucks. I'm out.
Yeah, I was looking for ways to get a refund. No sit jumping, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm done.
out.
This is totally Final Fantasy 14. Like, didn't have the jump. It's all over it again.
Yeah. In Guild Wars 1, you couldn't jump at all, and now Guild Wars 2, you can't sit jump. What is this?
What a slap in the face.
This is insanity.
Next up, Mike said, "We're working on an item previewer right now. It unfortunately didn't make it in for BWE2, but we'll definitely have it prior to ship." So good news, we talked about this before as well. I mean, an item previewer has to be in by launch. It's so standard. I don't see how they could possibly even think about shipping like that without this, but they obviously are. Especially, I mean, in Guild Wars 2, where appearance is, such a big deal with a die system.
Yeah, there's a you can get vendors with that have got sets from certain dungeons in Lion's Arch, and so you're standing there looking at an Azura going, I wonder how that would look on my 12-foot norm. I don't know. Yeah, please, we need that. I really need that.
Really?
Especially because they're going to have cosmetic items in the gem store, right? Where you're going to be like spending your real money without seeing how it's going to look on your character. That's just not going to work. Yeah, so we need it.
I gotta say, my favorite thing I bought, by the way, at the gem store was my little miniature guardian guy. Did anybody get one of those?
The mini pets are awesome.
Yeah.
The mini golem is about the cutest thing I've ever seen. He just goes stomping on after you. It was adorable.
They're brilliant. Of course,
Golem and cute. Those words, they don't go together.
But they're little.
I didn't buy one, obviously.
If you make something tiny, it's automatically cute.
Exactly. Like, that's how you
Is
just
that
make
true? I don't know if that's true.
I think so. There was some pretty hideous char running around, and they used the box of fun, and they became mini-sized, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're adorable now.
I'm going. That's a challenge to find something that defies that logic.
Go for it. I dare
Elizabeth
you.
challenges you. Go. Next up, Mike Z. Yes, I'm going with Mike Z. Said Guild Wars 2 should expect to have the same amount of downtime that Guild Wars 1 has had, which is about 32 hours total, give or take a few. We don't need to take our servers down to patch. So a lot of newcomers, this is going to come as a complete surprise. Yes, I read that again. Guild Wars 1 has only been down in its entire lifespan about 32 hours for anything.
7 years.
7 years. That's crazy. A lot of people don't realize that they don't take their servers down for patch time and things like that.
Yeah, I saw. I'm sorry, Scott, go for it.
I was running around with a game designer friend, and just to get his first time he played, just to get his first impressions, and go, servers are coming down for a restart. It's like, oh no, and oh well, and bling, back up again. Oh, okay, there's a new build. We've just basically patched the game, and it's working again. It was okay, that's great, and just carried on playing. So they don't need to bring everything down to fix everything or bring you back up or all that. It's a bit impressive, really.
Yeah, in Guild Wars 1, you'd actually be running around, and it'll actually pop up a little message saying, oh, there's a new build to your client. Please log off when you have a chance. And you're like, oh, okay. And you'll log off, and I'll
Half an hour later.
Yeah, it's like you're not even down. It's ready, and you're still playing. It's awesome.
One of those moments, again, we've had many of these moments on GuildCast. It's one of those moments I go, really? It took people that long to figure this out? Really? I mean, it was in Guild Wars 1, so obviously they figured it out a long time ago. It's like, where have all the other MMO companies been to kind of implement this technology?
Well, I think it's. I mean, I think like Richie said, it's awesome because it allows you to decide when you're going to log off versus being forced to get kicked out. And sometimes people only have a limited amount of free time. So if the server's telling them they can't play, that's really frustrating. But Gary, you're asking why haven't other companies figured this out? This is like a really hard technical problem. Like there's the whole concept of nines. How many nines can you have in your uptime? And the phone company shoots for it. Like there's like like the 5 nines, 99.999. And like you guys are saying, like what ArenaNet did with Guild Wars 1 is it's mind-boggling because companies in other industries, it's their job to have this kind of uptime, and it's extremely rare. Even more so for a game where they're constantly kind of patching and fixing things and stuff. So this is. I wasn't even aware of this until I saw this and they asked me anything about the 32 hours of downtime. I gave that a double tick. I was like, they got to be kidding me. That's probably like in a year, right, or a month or something. Not like across like the entire game's history. So. I think once people get used to this, the more people see it, it'll become a competitive advantage, and then other companies will be forced to adopt. But honestly, this is a really hard model. Most companies are used to, you build software, you bring down, you rotate servers out, you have people upload the client, etc. Like, it's a much simpler model just to say, we're going to have downtime, everyone update your servers, we'll get everything synced at the same time, and then bring it all up at the same time, versus different people might be running around with different versions of the clients for a little bit of time until, like Richie said, they decide, I'm going to go ahead and log off now and log back in. But I when I read this, honestly, it's like one of the few things I've ever seen technically in a game where I was like, wow, that's really, really impressive.
It's kind of great.
I wonder how many people saw that yellow. The game will be, there is a new build, and they're going, and logged off for an hour because they just thought,
thought
we just used to. Not only for an hour, well, it could be this, and then it'll come back up, and then it'll have to get repatched again, and it'll be down for another couple of hours, something like that. It was like, no, it's going to be rebuilt. It's logged you off, you're back on, it's working again. It took you a whole 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah, and
it's fantastic.
If you don't log off yourself, the game will actually kick you, and then the client restarts itself. So you don't even have to do anything. It's a very nice system.
You could be nom eating your dinner like you do right before every show, Ed.
Yep.
That's the best. Right before shows, he's always eating. That's like.
Well, I just got home. That was why, because I wanted to get back in time. But people did mention something interesting in chat, which is Guild Wars 1 was basically an instance game, which is true. It's a little bit different, ball of wax from having a persistent world. But if they already have the tech and they're able to get it to work for this game, this will be groundbreaking. And again, it's one of those things I don't think people will fully appreciate until they're like, people will come in like, could you imagine like the typical player from another game, let's say like, wow, we're like, well, Thursdays is usually maintenance day. What is it in this game? It's like, there is no maintenance day. It's like, what? It's just going to be one of those things. It's such a big shift, really.
Arena that's messing up our GuildCast time shift. We're supposed to do it right when server downtime's going. It's like, that's what exactly. GuildCast. Every Tuesday at this time we do the show. Then you can watch us. Like, we don't even have that. All right, finally, when asked which profession is the hardest to balance, John Peters said, Guardian.
Yep.
Scott, why you got to be so difficult?
Sirs.
Because it's worth it.
It is worth it.
Yeah, come on, it's such a good class. It takes so much balancing just to get it just right.
So much work. Hey everybody, really quick, if you like this episode of GuildCast or any of the other shows we do on Gamebreaker.tv, I know we've got Netflix, but if you don't want Netflix or you can't have it, I still urge you to go to Netflix. We do still take donations, and we rely heavily on donations. Keeps all the trains running here. If you guys like this episode or any of the other episodes, please go over to Gamebreaker.tv. In the top right corner is a little donate button right there. You can click that. It'll take you to a page. You can donate $1, $5, $10, whatever you can. And for all of you guys and gals out there who have donated, thank you so much for donating to Gamebreaker and making this all happen. So go on over and donate if you can. All right. We still got more show. What do we got? So we got Lindsay Murdoch posting on the forums here about leveling and crafting. She says the way leveling XP gain works in crafting is this. For leveling a discipline from 0 to 400, you will gain 10 levels along the way. By maxing out all 8 disciplines, you will gain 80 levels. That means you could dedicate a character to crafting. Feed it all the mats you get on other characters and level it all the way to 80 without ever needing to kill a thing. Yes. Without ever killing a thing, you could level to 80. I gotta think hardcore crafters gotta be excited about this, right? I mean, that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Who wants to explore?
Breathtaking world, who cares?
Who cares?
I want to stand at this station for the next 12 hours.
Is this
what
something?
do you want all that hills for? I've got a forge. I've got an anvil. I'm happy. I'll stay here.
But Scott, you're actually you're a huge crafter. You love crafting.
I do.
Are you gonna do anything
I'm
like
one
this?
of those weird people.
Yeah. I know when I first met Scott, he told me that. Like he's like, "Oh, come on as a writer." I was like, "All right, I'm gonna write a piece." He's like, "I'm gonna write about crafting." I was like, "Really? All right, sure." He's gonna write about something fun like PvP or no, I'm writing about crafting. All right.
Yeah.
Would you do something like this? I mean, is this something that sounds cool?
I don't know.
I mean, it's an alt. You don't have to be. You don't have to be your main.
It's true, but I like crafting as I go. I like to feel that. I've gone out and I've done loads of stuff and I've picked loads of things up. It's very easy to do it, of course, because all you got to do is put your mats into the bank. It shares it across the account, so it's very straightforward. But I just like the idea of my characters. Like, I like to focus on like my guardian's going to be a armor smith and weaponsmith, and then I'm going to have my ranger's going to be a leather worker. And
is that like a role playing thing for you? Like, are you like thinking about it, going like my guardian would hammer steel on an anvil and make swords?
To an extent, I guess to an extent it is. It's just it's something that it's my MMO habit. My main's like a pally type, and I'm an armor smith. It's always just the way I've always gone. It's just habitual now. But so I wouldn't do that myself. I mean, I can see why people would, and it's wonderful to have that option there. That you've got a perfectly valid way that people love to do, that can get them through. Well, to an extent, get them through the game.
Anybody else? Big crafters?
I love crafting, so I was super excited to see this, but I see it more as being kind of, like Scott said, kind of a supplemental thing, so I'm glad that crafting is a viable leveling option, but I certainly would never have the patience to sit there and do that on its own. For one thing, you'd have, if you really wanted to like either not have to buy stuff from the bank or not have to go out and get it on that character, you would have had to do a lot of gathering on other characters. So I can see that it would be an incredible amount of work beforehand to actually make that a viable option. But I do like knowing that crafting isn't going to be necessarily feel like a waste of time, because it's quick, it's efficient, and it gets you a wonderful return in XP.
But I guess I could also see, like, in a large guild or something, you could dedicate, like, somebody who really likes crafting and may not want to do this solo, is you could make an alt, make this your primary crafter for sort of the overall guild, and then have all your guildies feed mats to your guild. And you could just level it that way and just kind of have this master crafter. I don't know. There has to be a pacifist achievement for hitting max level this way, though, without killing anything, right? I mean,
technically, unless you had people running you through the tutorial area, you would have to kill something at some point, because there's the little tutorial instance where you do have to like kill the centaurs. So you'd have to have people with you. So your guildies, who are going to feed you materials, would go with you and clear out the fort, and then clear out the elemental while you're just sitting there.
You've obviously given thought to this.
You can't fail that, right?
You wouldn't have to, would you? Because the NPCs actually win it for you if you just stand back. So if you really wanted to, you could just stand there.
I do not trust the NPCs at all.
Me neither.
They're shifty, aren't they? They're so shifty.
They are. They'd just be like, I quit. I quit.
You think there's any way I don't know what it would cost, but you think there's any way that you could possibly power level an alt if you had the cash to burn later on in game, like say a year or two in?
It sounds like it, doesn't it? It does sound like you can buy a max level character once you have unlimited resources. It's kind of interesting because like I would never have considered this without this kind of statement, but it kind of makes me feel like I'll play my main, get to level 80, and just ship all mats up, and then I might not get a second character at 80, but if I can get a second character at 20 or 30 just doing this, it's kind of interesting. I am a completionist. I will want to have a tune with all of the crafting things maxed, but now it might not be my main character that does that. I don't know.
I have to say, it'd be really annoying as a level 80. Like, you're like, yeah, I'm an all-powerful level 80. I'm going to go unlock all my weapon skills.
Yeah. Choose engineer. Choose engineer.
Yeah, no joke.
Ed's just like, can I do this while I'm smashing you in the face in a battleground?
I didn't think of it about what Elizabeth has just said, that implication, because it would be cool. Like, one of the things in WW, you're not really that effective until you've like started unlocking some traits, and until you have some capability and utility skills that you can choose from. But that would be kind of weird to like be in a lobby zone, as level 20 or 30, and like just sit there and just keep hitting your button, your 1 key, until the 2 button shows up, and then you start hitting the 2 key and then the 3 key. Anyway, so.
How does this?
I think it's cool that you can do it though. I mean, I know people who they just want to be able to chill out on an alternative character, and this would actually give them something they could do. Because I'm trying to decide, like, on the one hand, I agree with both Richie and with Elizabeth that I like to craft as I'm leveling, but at the same time, I think if I didn't have to do it, if I could just channel the mats somewhere else, and then just have one guy who's really efficient just sits, like Scott was saying, just lives by the forge or whatever, crafting station. That's all he does. Then I could level up my crafting potentially faster. Without having to take downtime from my main activities. I don't know. It's just something else to think about as far as how you play the game.
Scott Hawks. He lives in a van down by the forge.
I've got an Azure Butler Golem standing next to me, and I'll just get everything out of there. I don't move 2 feet. Thank you very much.
Hey, I know we talked about this before, but so you can max all 8 disciplines on one character, right? But you can only use 2 at a time. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do you keep your progress in all the other disciplines? Can you switch between them really easily?
Yeah, so the way it works is that all your progress is retained, but if you switch back to a profession, it doesn't cost to switch away, as far as I know the last time I was playing. But if you're switching back to a profession, the higher your level is, the more it will cost you to kind of relearn those skills, and you'll be back exactly where you were when you left, but you've just lost a little bit on your way. A little bit of money, I should say.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right. What else we got? How about this? How about the armor dies? We got to check out this screenshot. If you guys aren't sold on the armor die system yet, I don't know if you've seen this. Have you seen this? That's not even all of them. I don't even think that's all of them. Do we know? Do we? I mean, that's a lot of die. I mean, do we know yet exactly how you can acquire all of these?
Yeah, they actually changed it quite a bit. They used to have the die manufacturers in the last beta weekend where you have to you would find like an unidentified die and you'd have to wait 24 hours to see what kind of die popped out. Now they moms just drop unidentified die. You double click them and a die gets added to your character. It's a much better system. Yeah, it's much better.
It's nice because you got the unidentified ones, of course, stack in the one. So you can just wait until you get near your bank, so you're not clicking it while you're out well, then you've got 25 different dies just filling your bags up. So yeah, that's useful, and you can get them from the Mystic Forge and
the gem store.
So is it not? It's not always random, or is it?
As far I haven't ever seen the ability to either go to the gem store and buy tranquil blue dye, or go out in the world and pick up something that says it is Starry Breeze dye or whatever. Interesting names, by the way. Good job. So as far as I know, I've only ever seen random die drops, but I feel like there is a way to get specific dyes.
I mean, how many people are going to want specific? Everybody's going to want specific. Everybody wants black. I mean, black's the coolest dye. Everybody's going to want to buy that.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody pointed out, somebody said that they're working on a way for you to make the exact color of dye you want using the Mystic Forge. You will need to get a specific crafting material for each color, but you will get the exact color you want. We don't really want dyes to be a gem store only feature. We understand that some people will be willing to pay more to get exact dyes or all the dyes, but we want to keep some aspects of the dye system in the game.
Okay, good update. Breaking news from chat room filling us in. I don't know. We got it. That actually sounds pretty cool. Let me read that again. I have it in front of me. Just everybody. Who is this? This is Kristen Cox on the official Guild Wars 2 forum. Says we are working on a way for you to make the exact color dye you want using the Mystic Forge. You will need to get a specific crafting material for each color, but you will get the exact color you want. We really don't want dyes to be a gem store only feature. We understand that some people would be willing to pay more to get exact dyes or all the dyes, but we want to keep some aspects of the dye system in the game. So it's a really good way to do it. I mean, I got to give ArenaNet props again. This is something they could have totally gotten away with like making it a cash shop only system, right? I mean, this could have been totally one of those areas where they could have just went microtransaction.
That's a really good point. I mean, they could totally have just made dies just a random pack for money, and if you want to get them, you're going to constantly get duplicates and different things. They could have just been jerks about it and just tried to make as much money as possible on people wanting to customize their gear. I'm so glad they're not going down that route, and it's just another thing to trust in ArenaNet. They will do right by you.
They're all scrambling right now. We didn't think of that. Wait, stop. Take that off the forums.
What am I saying?
Gem store. Oh my God. What do they reported on it? No way. Ed Park, aka Togrim. Go to togrim.com. Follow him on Twitter @Togrim. So great to have you back. Talking about some P versus P. Gotta have you back on, sir. Anything else you want to plug? Tell everybody where you can be found. Togrim.com.
No.
@Togrim on Twitter.
Yeah.
Razor Gameplay.
Yeah, he's been plugging himself the entire show.
He has been. There you go. He's a smart man. Reggie Procopio. Follow him on Twitter Reggie Procopio. Of course, go to massively.com and read all his amazing work over there. Reggie Procopio.
And my YouTube channel, Bog Otter. Check out my Guild Wars 2 videos with my son Logan.
Sweet.
Elizabeth
Claire. Follow her at Elizabeth Claire with an X. Go to massively.com and, of course, read her amazing work over there as well. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Never, ever. Yeah, of course I did.
Sorry.
I was actually waiting for them to not show my face at all and just straight to that.
I kind of Scott Ox.
Predictable.
Follow him at Jaramore on Twitter, and follow him at Jaramore on Twitter. There you go. That's it. You can follow me at Gary Gannon. You can follow Gamebreaker TV, Gamebreaker TV. Hey, tell your friends about Gamebreaker TV. We need a national Tell Your Friends about Gamebreaker TV day once a week, and maybe it'll be Tuesday every week. It's one day every week. Tell a friend about Gamebreaker TV because that's the only way we spread the word, to spread the love. So we can keep shows going. Let's grow the audience. Let's let the Guild Wars 2 community know that the GuildCast exists. We're going to do the show live every single Tuesday right here at 6. It's available on Wednesday morning right here. So for all your video game news, including Guild Wars 2, keep it locked in, dialed in right here to Gamebreaker TV. And we'll see you next week. Long show. Good show, guys. Almost 2 hours. Maybe we should stretch it out. Hang on. I'll just play this for 40 minutes.
No, please let's not.
You did such a good job.